We've all seen those prison reality shows and perhaps thought to ourselves, man, am I happy I don't have to deal with that mess my whole life. Or maybe you've seen HBO's infamous prison drama Oz, in which case you're definitely saying to yourself, I'm really happy I don't have to deal with any of that in my life. But what is a prison guard's real life actually like? Today we're turning once more to a friend of the show and a working prison guard in the Nevada Department of Corrections. In this episode of the Infographics show, could you handle being a prison guard? We wanted to get a real-life take on working with America's most violent offenders, not just list off random stats and numbers. So we're getting you the inside scoop on one of America's most dangerous jobs. Our revisiting expert has been a prison guard for 10 years and has been through it all. Riots, assaults on inmates, assaults on officers, you name it, and he's seen it by now. Standing at 5'9" and 200 pounds of solid muscle, with 6 years worth of military experience, our expert is no pushover. But when it's just you against hundreds of inmates, no amount of training is going to guarantee your safety in an emergency. So what's the job really like? Stay tuned and let's find out. Number 3. How dangerous is this job? Naturally, the first question we asked our expert is if the job is really as dangerous as we've seen on TV, both in reality shows and in prison dramas. He told us that unequivocally, yes, the job is extremely dangerous. As a corrections officer, you are typically working with a partner at all times, or have another officer within a few dozen feet of you if, for instance, you're working the dining facility. Aside from that, there's always a number of guards that can reach you within a minute of you calling for help. The way that guards are posted throughout a prison ensures that no guard is alone or out of reach of help for longer than 60 seconds, if that. On top of that, there's typically a quick reaction force which can assemble and be anywhere in the prison within 15 minutes maximum. But even having another guard posted just a few dozen feet away from you and being in a public facility such as the dining area can be little protection. Despite what most prison shows have told us, the majority of assaults against officers occur right out in the open, and the dining facility is a hot spot for officer assault. That's typically because prisoners have more freedom in the dining facility than they would have anywhere else, and the hustle and bustle of hundreds of prisoners can help hide an approaching prisoner looking to do you some harm. Even if help is just a shout away, a prisoner armed with a shank can do a lot of damage in the 3 seconds it takes for the other guards to get to you. In March 19th of this year, a prisoner in North Carolina attacked a prison guard with a homemade shank and landed 8 stabs with his 5-inch blade along the guard's neck and head before other guards came to her aid seconds later. Luckily, the prisoner's aim was off because just a single stab in the right part of the neck would have been almost instantly fatal. But instead, the guard was hospitalized in serious but stable condition. In 2017, another guard was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher before nearby guards could respond. In 2015, a guard in a Pennsylvania prison had his throat slashed open by a homemade shank. This attack also with other guards within eyesight. Clearly, a lot of damage can be done in just a few seconds with a homemade weapon, but even unarmed prisoners can prove fatally dangerous. In 2018, also in Pennsylvania, an inmate beat a prison guard to death with his bare hands, throwing the guard to the ground and repeatedly punching and kicking him in the head. The prisoner in question was already serving a life sentence for murder. This is why officers have to constantly keep their head on a swivel, and why you can never afford to let your guard, no pun intended, down for any reason. And this is part of what makes the job trickier than expected. Number 2. Prison politics. As our expert tells us, your job as a corrections officer is to ensure the safety and security of the prisoner population, but also to enforce the rules of the prison itself. You can go about this one of 2 ways, and one of the 2 will lead you to almost assuredly being beaten or killed by inmates. The first way is the way that most new guards try at first, and that's why they become miniature tyrants. They're quick to call prisoners out on infractions, quicker to penalize them, and generally act like they're above the prison population. This is because, as our experts tell us, the job is terrifying. Think about it, you're just a regular civilian one day, and then you get a few weeks, or if you're lucky, as much as a few months worth of training, and get thrown into the wrong side of the fence at maximum security prisons filled up with all sorts of dangerous criminals. In order to mask their fear and to prevent an attack, new guards often try to act super tough and come down really hard on inmates, as if by proving they're the bosses will keep dangerous inmates in line and well behaved. In fact, our expert tells us that the opposite is almost always true. Prisoners very quickly grow to resent a hard-ass guard, and many of them are very good at smelling fear and can see right through the tough guy act. When a new guard starts acting like the cock of the walk and coming down hard on everyone, prisoners will often move to test the guard. They'll purposefully try to intimidate the guard to see if he's really just scared and trying to bluff his way through the job. And if the inmates figure out that you're easily intimidated, then you're in serious trouble. That's because they'll then learn to manipulate you, use you to cover up for their infractions, or even force you to do things for them like sneak in contraband. The last thing you want in prison is to be a guard that the population knows is a pushover. If, though, you don't let on that you're scared and are just being a hard-ass, then prisoners will very quickly grow to deeply resent you. Yes, prisoners may be in prison and it's your job to enforce the rules, but you have to be smart about it, says our expert. Most of the guys and gals in a women's prison are doing very long stretches of time. Some are doing life sentences and know they'll never get out. To these long-timers, the threat of adding on additional time for assaulting a guard is meaningless and well worth it if it gets rid of a particularly troublesome guard. Most inmates are doing long stretches, says our expert, and want to be able to enjoy the tiny few comforts they may have in prison. Maybe that means that technically they're in violation of some minor rules, and that's when you have to ask yourself if enforcing the rule is really worth the trouble you may be brewing for yourself or the other guards. Our expert tells us that in all honesty, it's better to let the warden or a supervisor do a walkthrough of the site and discover the minor infractions for him or herself, and then force you to correct them. The inmates will see that and will shift their ire to the supervisor or warden instead of you. Sure, you may get chewed out by your supervisors, but better an occasional chewing out than constantly having to worry about getting shanked. Of course, not enforcing the rules can also be dangerous, because once more, it may encourage prisoners to take advantage of you. They may think that you're too scared to confront them over their infractions, or maybe they'll assume that you're just completely lackadaisical about the job, which will only encourage them to commit further and more serious infractions. Prisoners who don't respect you will very quickly make it clear, and even worse, may move to take advantage of you, manipulate you, or intimidate you into helping them do or get away with various things. Our expert tells us that inmates are very good about psychologically deconstructing each new guard and figuring out what they can get away with and just how much of it they can get away with. Number 1. Are all drugs, alcohol, or illegal contraband really that rampant? One of the things that prison shows teach us is that contraband is basically everywhere in prison. But is it really the case? And if so, just how in the world do drugs flow into the most secure facilities in the world? Our expert tells us that yes, drugs are pretty easy to find and get in prison. So easy, in fact, that in 2016, an inmate in California actually died from an overdose of methamphetamine. The problem is hardly an American one, with prisoners in England telling The Economist that drugs were easier to get in jail than soap was. But how is that possible? Our expert tells us that the majority of illegal contraband comes in by prison staff themselves. Drug-seeking inmates offer an incredibly lucrative opportunity for prison staff, as they are typically desperate enough to pay any amount to get their fix. Other times, prison staff will link up with gangs or even drug cartels on the outside in order to ensure a steady flow into the prison, with the staff member getting a nice cut of the profits for their part in the ploy. Inmates inside will trade various goods and services for drugs, but often prisoners will have family members or contacts on the outside pay cash for the drugs being brought in. Some gangs or drug cartels, though, will actually use drug sales inside prisons to buy one of the most powerful currencies that exists in a maximum security prison: influence. Influence buys you allies and can turn those allies on your enemies. It can ensure special favors from other prisoners, such as targeted assassinations of jailed snitches, or just buy protection. Influence is just as important for prisoners serving long sentences as food and water. Other times, though, prisoners don't need staff members in on the trade and find very ingenious ways to get their contraband inside the walls of a maximum security prison. Drugs are often snuck in by visiting family members or friends who wrap them up in plastic and stick them inside an orifice. For men, this is typically the anus, but for women it can even include vaginal insertion. The visitor will then move to the bathroom, remove the packet, and covertly hand it off during their visit. One prisoner had his sister buy him heroin, which she then sewed into the hem of a towel, and yet other prisoners simply get their drugs in the mail. While packages are always inspected, with the high volume of mail traffic, most letters never are. So if you have an outside source that sends drugs inconspicuously inside a letter, there's a good chance of it getting through. One prison in England was flooded with drugs after allowing inmates to receive Christmas cards. Modern technology also makes sneaking drugs into prisons even easier than ever, with inmates using snuck-in cell phones to coordinate packages of drugs which are then hurled over the outer fencing or even flown in via drone. In these cases, the drone typically flies high above the prison to avoid being seen, and then simply releases the drug package to fall to the earth. Drugs that are simply lobbed over the outer fences can come packaged inside tennis balls or even dead pigeons. When it comes to getting high, there's no shortage of ingenuity. With an average salary of $43,550 and full health benefits, being a correctional officer is not going to make you rich, but certainly can be a comfortable job. Yet with a workplace injury rate that is second only to police officers, it's also a very dangerous job. You have to constantly be vigilant and on guard against the hundreds of inmates all around you, knowing that if anything goes down, you're outnumbered at least 4 to 1. And with a lot of prisons in America having a staff shortage of 25% or more, you might end up a lot more lonely on the job than you had bargained for. Do you think you have what it takes to be a corrections officer? Tell us in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video, What Did Alcatraz's Most Dangerous Prisoners Do? Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.